8 years ago, we bought a clapped out old van that allowed us to travel the world by converting it to a camper van with nothing but a corded hand drill and a jigsaw. We recently said goodbye to Veronica and bought Vivian, a brand new second-hand van ready to convert to our new home on wheels. In the previous video, I installed sound deadening and insulation on the walls, I treated some holes and rust on the floor, battened it out, installed a sheet of plywood, and then installed a premium vinyl floor. It's not premium, but that's the way this build is going.
So this is the part I've been looking forward to and dreading in equal amounts, the electrics. I made a bit of a bodge job with them in my last van. I had to rely on my friend to come and help me out a ton, and the bits I did myself were pretty poor going. And I've only got basic tools to do all this because I don't normally work with electrics. I've got a screwdriver specifically for dealing with electrics, stolen from said friend. I've got a rusty pair of pliers for crimping things down. I've got some, what I believe are called side cuts for trimming down the wires. I've got a cheap set of wire strippers as well, but they actually work all right. And I've got a Stanley knife. Now I'm going to be using all of these bits for a box of tricks that I've ordered in. Now I tried to do all of the electrics, price them up from different sites, and I basically couldn't get it for any cheaper than a site called Van Junkies. This is not a sponsor, not a plug. Believe me, I would have liked some money off, but they do a whole package. You tell them what you're going to be running and they give you a quote. I didn't like the package that they put together, so I emailed back and asked for single solar panel but bigger battery, and they said no problem. They amended it. Can't fault their customer service. They've been fantastic. But what they've sent me are things that I've never used before. So here's my understanding of it, and I'm sure you guys can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. First things first, there'll be a solar panel on the roof. The solar panel will come through this ignition protected trip. And basically, if there is a surge in current that is too high for the next part, this will trip like that and you have to reset it. Then we've got the solar charge controller. I went through 3 of these in the last van because I bought the 20 quid ones off Amazon. This is a smart solar charger, and what it does is it allows for the solar panel to be in shade and then controls the cells on the solar panel to make sure that it's still keeping the current consistent as well as handling any variation, I believe. Next, we've got bus bars. Again, something that I didn't use in the last van. Everything that was positive went to the red terminal, everything else went to the black terminal of the battery. It's probably why I went through 3 batteries in about 7 years. After that, we've got a little fuse box where everything's going to come into. It's got a negative and a positive, and then basically everything will come into here, and then you have these little card fuses that I've got a bunch of lying around somewhere, so that way that it can trip if it needs to trip without damaging anything else. Another negative that's going to come in is to this. This is a smart shunt. Again, I pushed the boat out a little bit on these. You can get shunts for a lot less than I paid for this. I think this was about 60 quid. What a shunt does is it gives you a real-time, actual, accurate measurement of how your battery's doing. How much charge is in there, how much is coming in, how much is going out, how long you've got left running your battery at the current usage. The reason I went for a smart one is all this is going to be hidden, and this links up to your phone, so you can see it on your phone, or you can buy a little display, a Bluetooth display to put in your van, and it will connect to that. Then final part is this. This is a battery shut-off switch, so if you're doing any work and you need to shut the battery off, this is what you use. As well as all this, I've got a random selection of things that I've bought from Amazon rather than Van Junkies. So I've got some cable conduit. That's really good for running the cable through the van. I'm not going to be using it in the way that most people use it, laying the conduit first and then threading through. I'm using it to protect the wires. There's a lot of sharp metal in the van. That looks after your wires. I've also got packs of heat shrink, dirt cheap off Amazon for all of those. I've got packs of what they call T-connectors for splicing one wire directly into another without using Wagos. And then I've also got some of these wire connectors. On top of that, I've got some big beefy cables, some with inline fuses. These are the ones that Van Junkies put together in my package for me. Again, price wise, I'm not hiding anything from you guys. Everything that I've mentioned here will be on the spreadsheet that's in the description. The Van Junkies package was just for me. They change it based on what you want, but that came to just over £1,000. All of these bits, they're like £5 or £6 each. But in terms of buying all of these separately, I couldn't get it cheaper than I got from Van Junkies. And that £1,000 does include the solar panel and the battery, which I'll show you when it stops raining.
Whilst it was still raining outside, I decided to crack on with what I'm calling the motherboard. Probably not an accurate term, but this is just an old piece of sheathing ply and I'm attaching all of my electrical components to it. I'm trying to leave space in between everything so that I can organise everything from the start. There's a very good reason I'm doing this separately rather than putting it on the van wall. My last electrical setup was on the van wall, and whenever I wanted to add anything to the circuitry, it was a bolt-on. Whereas this time I'm taking the attitude of start neat and accept that you will eventually end up in chaos. That's the way electrics works. But if you start with chaos, you're just going to end up with an unmanageable mess of misery later down the line. The important thing for me here was to leave a space between each component so that the right gauge of wire could go between without being under too much strain. So that's all I'm doing, putting each wire to each component based on the wiring diagram you can see on the left. That's part of the Van Junkie service. They send you a pretty basic wiring diagram, but basic enough that a simpleton like me can understand it. I'm making sure that wherever there is a connection or an eyelet on the end of each wire, I am heat shrinking it unless the wire provided already had one on. Some of the cases I've gone back and added a heat shrink, but here you can see me using a lighter. Now, most people would use a heat gun here. I haven't got one, so a lighter will make do. Just try not to hold it close enough so that it burns like I did on this first one.
Right, I think I'm about as far as I can get without the solar panel and the battery being installed in the van. It's still raining, so I can't do that. I'm going to try and explain what's going on here the best I can, with the proviso that I don't know what I'm doing. We are missing a wire here. This is the positive from the solar panel. That will come in here through this trip, out and into the PV, which is photovoltaic positive on the smart solar charger. From there, it comes out of this positive point, through this inline fuse, into the positive bus bar, which is like the hub for all of the positives. Out of here comes the fuse panel. In here, we will have lights coming off and coming in. We will have diesel heater, we will have fridge, everything will be wired to this, hence why the wire here is a little chunkier than the wire from the panels. If we follow the negative will come from the solar panel into the PV negative there. It will come out of the negative there into the negative bus bar. Again, everything's connected into this, including the fuse box, which everything will run off. And then the negative comes out of here into the smart shunt. The smart shunt will go to the negative of the battery and coming out of the positive here into this battery switch, which isn't attached yet because I can't, will go to the positive of the battery. So I've still got to bring positive negative from the panel in, positive negative from the battery. And I'm quite pleased with how neat everything is. Okay, so I am very temporarily hooking everything together. I can't wait any longer for the rain to stop. I need to know if this is working. This is my battery, 314 amp hour lithium-ion battery from Fogstar. Not sponsored or anything, they're just the kind of leaders in the leisure battery world. I went lithium-ion this time because even though it's 314 amp hours, it means I can drain it fully. As opposed to a lead acid battery, you can only drain to about 40–50%, then you knack your battery. I've done it multiple times. In theory, if I turn this on and the lights come on, then that means that this portion of the circuit here works. I still won't know whether the solar panel charging section works yet until I've put the solar panel in. And we have very cheap, very tacky lights, which means the main circuit works, which is an absolute bonus.
Raining outside still, good old British weather, I decided to start fitting the angle brackets onto the solar panel. Now I went for the angle brackets because I knew there were some ridges on the roof of the van that I needed to work around. I thought these angle brackets would be tall enough to get around those. Spoiler alert, they're not. So I'm putting them in this position, but I do have to move them in the end. The panel I've chosen to go with is a 185 watt Victron solar panel. Victron seem to be leading the way in these 12 volt solar panels, and they're included in that Van Junkies package. I couldn't find them any cheaper anywhere, and this solar panel pretty much is the same size as the one I had on my last van, except the one on my last van was 100 watts for the same area. Technology be crazy. Here's the reason I put those bolts in the wrong place, because look how dented that roof is. It is completely caved in, and I did try and press it up from the inside, and this is about as straight as it goes. It was worse when I bought the van. However, my intention was to have a solar panel go widthways, like so. And please ignore me scratching the frame here with this raw aluminium. It hurts. But as you can see, the indent on the two sides doesn't allow the solar panel to sit above the raised profile in the middle. Now you might be thinking, well, that's your fault, you should have realised that. It's not the same at the back of the van. The back of the van is near enough flat, slight raised profile in the middle. And then I thought, do you know what? Turn it lengthways. Then lengthways, it's even more stealthy. People won't even know there's a solar panel up there. And do you know what? It fit perfectly between the roof bars. And I will add that I need to keep the roof bars because that's where the kayaks or canoes are going to go when we go away in this van. Look how snug a fit that is. And the bowing of a kayak or a canoe will sit above that. Perfect. I was so happy with this that I started taking measurements, making sure everything was centered, ready to start drilling the holes to go through. I had not taken into account where those holes were going to go into the van. Now there are fixing points on this solar panel, and yes, I could have potentially drilled new fixing points, but I didn't have the equipment to do it at this point, so I had to make do with the ones I had. And where those little angled brackets are sitting, it is not possible to go through the van roof and have that sit where it needs to sit. I tried 1,000 different things, and I know you'll be commenting, I could not get it to work. Not without having the angled brackets at the front sat way back from the solar panel, and in my mind, then it's just like a wind chute to rip it off the roof. I played around with this solar panel so much that I decided to duct tape feet to the bottom of the angled brackets for the solar panel. They're just duct tape and pieces of cardboard to stop it scratching as I moved it around. I had to remove each one of those individually and then attach them again after I'd used a Sharpie to mark out where I was going to drill through the ceiling. After I'd marked out all of the spots I needed to drill, I came back up with a metal drill bit and drilled through the roof of the van, which stings. I hate drilling through the exterior because I can't fix it. Anything on the interior, I can fix and hide. This is exposed forever. You'll notice I've got a rag there and I'm going to hoover these up as well. It's really important, all those shards that come off from drilling, that you take them off the roof. I didn't do it in my last van and I ended up with these orangey brown spots all over the roof. Those are the metal shards from drilling or cutting that then sit on the roof, rust, and then it's permanent. They seep through the wax, they seep through the paintwork, and you cannot get those rust spots off. With the brackets moved to an appropriate place where it will clear the roof of that van, I could then prop the whole solar panel up using a block and then apply some Sikaflex. Now this could be silicone, it could be any kind of sealant. Sikaflex is my go-to with the van because it doesn't just seal, it acts as an adhesive as well. I squirt a good dollop of Sikaflex around those screw holes, and then I also apply some to the underside of the bracket, and I apply some just before I put the bolts in as well. Basically just cover it all in Sikaflex. Nobody's going to see this roof unless they're climbing up to see it, and I'm not going to be doing that. I take the mentality of I'd rather be overzealous with the old Sikaflex than underzealous and deal with water coming in the van. Next up was the wiring for the solar panels. Now the solar panels come with these two heavy duty cables to take the 12 volt from the solar panels into the van. Now they have these exterior connectors on them which are completely weatherproof. They also come with this conduit, I guess you would call it, that sits on the van roof and the cables thread through. Now I've marked up one of my cables here, which is the positive, with some red tape, just so that future me knows which one is which, otherwise you can cause some damage. These cables are designed to have the connection on the outside of the van. They are completely weatherproof. In my previous van, I thought that these connections had to be on the inside, so I ended up cutting them off and trying to rewire them. You have to buy a whole new piece of kit for that, which costs about 50 quid. They are designed to sit on top of the van. The only issue is they will rattle unless they're secured. So all I'm doing here is threading them through that conduit that's going to take them into the van, and then I can clamp them down. I drilled 2 more holes in the top of the van, this time using a hole saw. These were only just big enough for the cables to go through and so that I could fit some grommets in there. Now these grommets I had left over, but they cost about 3p each. These grommets are basically designed so that the wire does not scrape against the sharp metal of the van. You can get around this in other ways, and I have done in the past, by using foam or by using gaffer tape to just go around the edges. But this was just easier. You can see from my Sharpie mark I've already decided where this is going to go. This can only go here to the right of the screen, where you see that nice big section where you think, oh yeah, that would fit beautifully. There is some internal pillaring in the van, so it can't go through there. It does mean I'm going to have to build up the difference between that raised part and the recessed part with some Sikaflex. Maybe not the neatest job I've ever done, but that's going to hold. Remember that Sikaflex is not just a sealant, it is an adhesive as well. So I've been very liberal with it and made sure that there's nowhere for water to get in. I also use a bit of gaffer tape to clamp it down until it sets. I plug in those exterior connectors, which again are waterproof, and I should be good to go. I'm going to have to do a bit of cable tie management to make sure everything's neat up here, but for now I just want to test to see if it works. I have got a plan to neaten these wires up at a later date. On the interior of the van, I wasn't happy that the solar panel was just going to bolt into the sheet metal of the roof. So I created these little blocks, which are just pieces of 9mm ply. I drilled some holes to make sure they threaded over the bolts, and then I cut away the insulation. After cutting away the insulation, I could then Sikaflex these to the roof and then bolt in through that, just to add a bit of rigidity to the roof. And I just couldn't help myself but to test everything out. With the solar panel wires coming in and my circuit board already built, I dragged the battery in, and then I temporarily attached some connections to these big chunky wires that go to the battery, and just gave everything a test run. And the results were incredibly positive. Everything seemed to work flawlessly, and I could check all of that by using that smart shunt and the app that comes with it to make sure that the input was coming in from the solar panel, that everything was charging, and I could measure and see how much time I had left on my battery before everything ran out. I'm going to leave this video right here as it seems like a right place to stop it. In the next video, I'm going to be moving on to cladding one of the van walls and then also building a bed, or the start of a bed at least, and somewhere to hide all of these electrics under. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. Have a look in the comments below. I'll link to the spreadsheet that I'm keeping so that you know exactly how much I've spent. I hope to see you all in the next one, and if you've got anything from this video, please hit the like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. Thank you.